We're glad to have you here. Okay, we are recording this just to let you all know. You probably saw something that popped up on your screen just now. We're recording that way folks can watch later if they're not able to join us right now. It would be great if we could start with a quick round of introductions, if you all don't mind. We'll just go around and share your name, the organization you're with, and maybe kind of how that touches fair housing or what your experience in that world might look like, just very briefly. And then we'll dive in. We have a guest speaker today. Sarah is joining us from the HUD offices, and she's going to share a little bit more about her work and kind of that world of things. And then once she's through that piece, we'll have a chance for everybody to ask her questions and kind of a general discussion with the group before wrapping up with some information about Fair Housing Month, which is coming up quickly in April. So let's start with some introductions though. For those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Melinda Mcelrick. I work with the city of Boise. I'm our Housing and Community Development Operations Manager. So I kind of oversee a lot of different aspects of our work, but that includes our HUD funds now. So I'm going to call on people just to make this a little faster since it's always challenging on Zoom. Inga is next in my box.
All right. Can you hear me? It's always the moment of truth. I'm Inga from NeighborWorks Boise, and I think the fair housing crossover relates most to our affordable rentals and apartment communities. So I'm just excited to kind of learn from these experts because I'm new in all of these housing conversations, but just excited to learn and be a part of the conversation.
Awesome. Welcome. Mike, you're up next.
My name is Mike Dittenber, and I'm the director of the Caldwell Housing Authority here in Caldwell. And we have a few hundred units of affordable rental housing, and we're in the process of our next phase of development for affordable housing.
Awesome. Thanks. Rebecca.
Hey, good morning. This is Rebecca Lemons with St. Alphonsus Health System and the Director of Community Health and Wellbeing. We utilize housing as healthcare. We believe that housing is critically important to the health of our patients. We invest in housing in two different ways. One, we have community health workers who screen our patients for their housing needs and do navigations and referrals for them to a number of your programs for their needs. And also we invest in affordable housing and workforce housing across our health system footprint.
Great, thank you. Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Dale. I'm the state director with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I was sort of the founder and facilitator of what we'll call the Fair Housing Forum Phase 1, and I'm just happy as a clam to see 20 of us on here, and great work to you guys that have pulled this all back together. Thank you.
Thanks for starting us out. That's great. Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal Campbell. I'm with the City of Meridian, and I administer the Community Development Block Grant.
Thank you. Erin.
Hi, Erin Anderson with the Housing Company. We are a nonprofit owner, developer, and manager of affordable housing throughout the state of Idaho. And so we definitely touch on and deal with fair housing on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thanks. Carrie.
I am Carrie Foster. I'm with the City of Caldwell, and I am in the CDBG program and I'm considered the specialist.
Thanks, Carrie. The next one doesn't have a name. Dee Penny.
Yes, this is David Penny. I'm general counsel for Tomlinson and Associates, and as a housing provider, we're always interested in fair housing and the perspective from multiple people involved in housing. So,
absolutely wonderful. April.
Good morning. My name is April Durant. I'm a senior program analyst here with HUD Idaho, located in Boise. And we get a lot of fair housing customer service calls and, try to do a lot of appropriate referrals. And it's great to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks. Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Harper. I am with Thomas Development. I am an asset manager for the ownership group. We have a lot of properties throughout Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, and Arizona. And I see fair housing daily with the multifamily housing that we do for affordable housing.
Wonderful, thanks. Krista.
Hi, my name is Krista and I work at the City of Nampa and I help administer our CDBG program, specifically our Brush Up Nampa program and our home repair program.
Hannah.
Hello, I'm Hannah. I'm also with the City of Nampa Community Development Division, and I oversee a little bit of the CDBG grant and work primarily with our subrecipients.
Wonderful. James.
Oops, sorry, I was a little slow on the draw. This is James Kordich from the U.S. Department of HUD, FHEO. I am the branch chief out here for programs and compliance, Region 10. I'm joining Sarah Sharp, she's the reviewer of a lot of Idaho products. So I'll be joining you and providing some thoughts and perspectives from out here. Nice to be here.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you. And Sarah.
Hi, this is Sarah Sharp from FHEO in Region 10. I'm based here in Seattle, and it's great to be joining you today. I definitely see many names that I recognize from different forms and documents, so it's great to hear some voices.
So glad to have you with us. Amara. Amara, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay. Oh. We'll circle back. Maybe she's having microphone issues. Zoanne.
Hi, this is Zoanne Olson with the Intermountain Fair Housing Council. We serve the whole state of Idaho, provide education outreach and investigations of fair housing complaints. Thank you and glad to be here today.
Thanks for joining us. Matt.
Hello, I'm Matt Jameson with the City of Nampa. I help administer the city's community development block grant and CARES Act grants.
Awesome. Anne.
Hello, I'm Anna Church, assistant to Deanna Watson at the Housing Authorities. She'd be here, except she's presenting the West Ada School District's having a service community assets meeting, and she's there. But we administered the Section 8 program in Boise and Ada County, as well as the low-income housing, public housing programs. So we're always involved in the fair housing as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Monica Fabi with Intermountain Fair Housing Council. I'm a staff attorney here. I've done a lot of investigative work and a lot of educational work, and I look forward to hearing the presentation today. Have a super day, y'all.
Thank you. We'll circle back, Amara. I think you might still be on mute. I don't know if anybody can hear anything. Okay, we're so glad to have you with us. Whatever's going on with microphones, it's still always a challenge.
See you, Amara.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us. I want to make sure that we have lots of time for our guest speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sarah and her colleague, James, to share with us kind of their world, what they do, current trends, things that they see in our area. So Sarah, feel free to take it over.
Hi. Yeah, so again, this is Sarah, and I'm here with FHEO, Fair Housing Equal Opportunity, based out of Seattle. I'm in Region 10 here. And, you know, I work in programs and compliance. FHEO is divided into two divisions. We got investigations and programs and compliance. And so I believe I have taken and done paper reviews. Maybe some annual action plans for the city of Meridian and Napa. So some of you might have seen my name come across your desk at some point. So, you know, for the most part, and James, you were going to talk about investigations, so I'll let you just do a brief introduction.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone again. Yeah, so but just by way of background, like I said, I'm the branch chief out here, and I think many of you are probably familiar with who I am. I've been around. I guess I'll give you a little bit of background, and then just kind of give you an overview of our operations. But I've been with HUD. Let's see, this is my 19th going on 20th year. Became a branch chief not too long ago, and so, you know, my group, as Sarah mentioned, that there are other divisions at HUD in our region, programs, enforcement, and intake. And then we have subdivisions of each of those branches, and I won't bore you with that structure, but what we deal with in programs, as opposed to like enforcement, because we do cross somewhat with our activities, is we deal with the work products that come in from other divisions, primarily for our fair housing input. So CPD, public housing, and multifamily divisions will say, we'll get a submission from a recipient, a city, a county, a state, and they'll come to us and say, hey, there's a fair housing component to this. We're required to run it by you. What do you think? And then we will go through an assessment of our perspective from FHEO, and we look for, based upon our guidance, you know, court cases, things along those lines. And then we will send that work product back with our recommendations for either approval, disapproval, or some other type of hybrid of that. Sometimes we'll work and ask for different documentation directly from the recipient or from the program office. So all that said, that's our role in programs and compliance with respect to kind of upfront, I guess what we call upfront civil rights reviews. But we also do other things. We do multifamily reviews of what we call AFUMPs, or the Affirmative Fair Housing Marketing Plans. And we also do public housing reviews for the PHA annual plans. And then this is just, that's the vast majority of what we do, but we also do other things like enforcement related activities, compliance reviews, which cover Title VI, Section 504, Section 109, and a host of other authorities. And we also engage in Title VIII investigations. We cross over with our enforcement division somewhat, since we handle cases that have Title VIII and other authorities like Title VI, Section 504, and so on. And then we evaluate those just like enforcement does, except that we're specialists in handling combination cases. So before this job, I worked as a prosecutor for the state of Connecticut for a number of years. And so I come from a little bit of a legal background, and now I've put that to work here. And the differences are stark, but since I've been around a while, it's something I find very rewarding and enjoyable. Let's see. So is there anything else I wanted to touch on before I turn it over to, oh, the enforcement component? Sarah, if you don't mind, I'll follow up with the enforcement component a little bit further after your kind of intro and talk about what you do with the more of the details of what you do with respect to these products that come in from our recipients and from our other divisions. And I'll probably throw things in here and there from my perspective as a reviewer, because I might have I review everyone's work products, so I might have a little bit more to add from time to time, if you don't mind.
Okay, yep, so I'm back and I'll turn my camera on now so everybody can see who I am. So yes, for some of the upfront reviews that we do, I tend to see pretty good product coming through my desk, as far as initiatives that go out and reach a diverse group of people, have a broad impact. Things that we always talk about that we want to see more is the affirmative action up front. Is how is the work product going to take and impact diverse communities? What is the impact of a sidewalk rehabilitation product? How is that going to directly impact persons with disabilities? Education and outreach that's going to reach a more diverse audience outside of who's already being reached by the work product. So network relations and more the affirmative actions and explaining the affirmative actions. And I don't know how many people on the audience work with affirmative fair housing marketing plan. That's one of those elements that we're always, asking, for community contacts, community supports. And that's also one of the feedbacks that we often give in our annual action plan reviews is, the affirmative, really taking increasing opportunities, because it's not just fair housing, it's fair housing and equal opportunity. And I don't know if we have any questions related to that as far as brainstorming ideas on initiatives, practices. If there are any questions, I'll open up the floor right now. So nothing at the moment.
Right, Sarah, this is Zoe Olson with Intermountain Fair Housing Council. And I'm wondering if there are good examples that we could share with our colleagues, if there's templates that might be helpful to affordable housing developers, to our jurisdictions, just so that there's something that they have available to them that they could use as a template.
As far as HUD, I am not aware of any templates that are available. James, you can chime in. I have seen templates that are provided by different management companies that they use for their marketing campaigns.
Zoanne, if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit on what kind of templates you're referring to, that'd be helpful.
Well, I know that a lot of times housing providers will need information on what it should look like, the formatting, how to conduct an affirmative marketing. I mean, there's really great resources from HUD, but there used to be on the clearinghouse, there used to be examples of various products that HUD compiled. And I just think I know for us, even, showing good examples, I always would refer people to the HUD clearinghouse, because then they would get examples from all over the country that were done by, various organizations to show good examples. So I'm just wondering if there's anything like that. I haven't seen anything recently, but I know if people ask for that, I know we all, I would hope so, but I think we all in this state help share that with each other. But, I just want to see if there's something that HUD has, if they put additional resources on the clearinghouse.
Well, Sarah, are you familiar with what's on the clearinghouse? I've been in there a few times, but I don't recall looking for model AFUMs, for example, or plans. But I'll see if someone who's a frontline practitioner might have done that.
No, see, I'm not familiar with any kind of templates at all at this point. So that's something for me to do some further.
Well, I do know of templates because I just pulled one down from the HUD website, but I think it sounds like Zoanne's referring to examples, completed examples, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be like examples of various ones that were, I don't want to say HUD approved, but were, had gone through kind of the HUD rigor. and so I know people were sharing like things that they had created. And I know everybody can Google them, but you want to make sure they're not just something somebody's thrown up there. You want to make sure that it complies with the Fair Housing Act, like non-discrimination statements or, things that are, helpful. And HUD just has really good examples, like a lot of the education outreach stuff and the FHEO notice and stuff like that. So I was just hoping, because I know that's really helpful to all of us when we can go, hey, here's some examples of what we've done. And then people can work together to tailor it, because all the jurisdictions are trying to help, community members and affordable housing developers and, PHAs and that. So, if not, maybe that's something the forum could work with you all on. That's just to throw that idea out there.
Indeed. Sorry for the, I'll just say we'll follow up on that for sure and see what's out there and get back to you on that.
Yeah, this is Eric Kingston with Idaho Housing. I would agree with Zoe's kind of request. I think, Sarah and James, if you have, as you review these affirmative fair housing marketing plans or other documents from different jurisdictions, both from, like from cities and counties or from state government or from PHAs or HFAs, housing finance associations, and you see best practices, reflected in those, maybe provide links to those with the appropriate disclaimer, generated by HUD's legal. But that would really be helpful, I think, to see what you all consider as sort of meeting the standards that you're looking for. That'd be really helpful.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And I'll have Sarah follow up with anything we find. We'll share the link or the resource with the group.
Great, and anything you have in that respect, I'll be glad to post that on at fairhousingforum.org. And that way, this group, we can all share that information easily.
Great.
I will go ahead and point out one resource that I have used in the past, and that is something that would be useful, but it's not an example. Maybe they have examples. I have to look a little bit further in the attachment, but the Affirmative Fair Housing Marketing Requirements Handbook is online, and you can download components of it. And you would assume that there is an example here, but there's a number of appendices. So I'd have to go through and go ahead and go through that and then let you know where that's at. So I appreciate your patience with that.
So I know when I've looked online at HUD's website, I'm able to find documents that really relate to housing providers, like property managers or folks that run multifamily. But I'm having a hard time finding things that would apply to local government. So one of the issues we run into in Idaho, and probably it's similar to a lot of rural states, is if you've got small cities or counties that don't have a lot of administrative capacity, they could really use, I think Zoanne referred to like a template or some way of simplifying and streamlining that process using plain language in the instructions and helping them, comply basically with the AFFH regs. Because they're, sometimes what I'm hearing is some of them shy away from applying for HUD funds, even though their communities need it, because they're kind of overwhelmed by that process. And so that would be, I think, really helpful for a lot of small towns.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
And are there any kind of like hot topics that the audience maybe would like to bring up and address in, completing affirmative fair housing marketing plans? What we are looking at in the review of the con plan, annual action plan, CAPER, general comments that maybe you see given over and over again are issues that you run into and you don't know how they could be best answered in it.
This is Matt with the City of Nampa. I do have one question. A lot of the comments we receive back for things like action plans and capers, we're working on developing sort of internal resources for language translation and partnering with the Hispanic Cultural Chamber is going to maybe help us with some translating of documents. So the stuff we're putting out is going to be a little more accessible. And so those things are clear to me how I can improve those areas. But the one that I struggle with is how to bridge the digital divide. So making sure people, I think some of that's broadband and some of that is in those kind of comments, are you referring to like folks' ability to access our information digitally? Or are you referring to the overall arching broadband?
Yeah, I think, that comment in the FHEO review is kind of how are funds going to be used to bridge that divide? Or how can they be applied to bridge that divide? And that is and especially with work from home, that is becoming a more pressing issue for people who do have access to internet services, and a lot of notices community outreach being online. So that's a plan in there as far as, how is the digital divide going to be reduced? Is, internet going to be, the access of internet going to be developed? Are hotspot facilities going to be better expanded? These are kind of like issues that we're wanting to see in that section. There's not a direct answer. It's just kind of hoping that divide's going to eventually be reduced, not that it's going to necessarily be solved.
Okay, we've had things like conversations with school districts, especially at the beginning of the COVID issues related to kids accessing and COVID, and almost every person I talked to, principals and all reassured me that they had everything they needed to get kids at home connected to the internet. So they had hotspots, they had laptops for every kid. So there wasn't a lot of things I could do there, but we were trying to have the conversation, but it seemed like they already had the resources. Where we're working right now is trying to get our foot in the door a little bit on some of these more statewide, and then some of the meetings they're holding statewide, which are allowing me to find out who's trying to penetrate the market, so that we can try to reach out to them and see what their plans are, if their plans are to come to our community. Like things like that would be things that you would say is like we're trying to find ways to get people, because we're trying to find providers that have, instead of a targeted area approach to where it's most profitable, we're trying to find ones that are trying to market the entire city, and their goal is to just provide it to every neighborhood they can as funds are available, right?
Yeah. And that's, we just want to see the effort.
Okay.
That's more of our concern, is that there's effort. It's not that it's necessarily going to be resolved.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And if I can add, Matt, that's a great point. What you had just mentioned to us is exactly what would be great to see in your submission.
Okay.
That the steps that you went through, because obviously we're trying, we're being HUD is data driven these days, especially. And if you, I mean, first of all, it's optimal to have some type of data to rely upon. But anecdotal evidence as far as you're actually on the ground experience trying to figure out how to resolve any divide issues, assuming they exist in your area. That is exactly what we would want to see, because it doesn't have to be resolved, but it should be moving that direction. And if you can, first of all, identify what the issue is, and we realize that that may be just reaching out to folks that you have identified that may, like school districts that may have this issue. That is the very, that's the steps that we want to see in these plans coming in. So I encourage that. And then, like you said, just reaching out to the providers that, are, let's say, applying to provide services in the area, offering incentives, whatever is available. Any type of creativity along those lines is definitely encouraged by HUD.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. I think I don't include things a lot of times because they're not actionable. Like they're not things that I was able to say we, had this thing happen because of our actions. It's really more just us trying to dive into the pool and figure out what we can find that would work for our community. So it's, but it's good to know. I'll just try to remember to include more of that information when I submit the KFERs and the action plans.
Yeah, and you'll notice too on the internet divide, the digital divide, that's one little element that we're bringing attention to, but we're not actually it's not measurable in your total review. It's just something that's an element that we are considering.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to underscore what Sarah's saying, I don't believe there are any points assessed on that aspect on our review checklist. But Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
I think we do mention that in order to give folks the idea that this is something that HUD is looking at to see what it's being done around, in our region.
Okay, thank you.
And Christine, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, Sarah, thanks. My apologies for arriving a little late to this meeting, so you may have already touched on this, but we just completed our consolidated plan and analysis of impediments to fair housing. And one thing that kind of kept coming up as, sort of a challenge when doing those plans was the data that we were using. Idaho has been growing so quickly and changing so quickly in the last couple of years that it seemed like what we were reporting on was already out of date. And it was kind of, I don't know if there's any efforts on HUD's end to kind of try to move those data sets up. I know we function on kind of a 4-year ACS data. And it just, for me, that was kind of a unfortunate thing that we couldn't necessarily address outside of in the narrative section, knowing that, our rents are this high and our, just our housing cost burdens and stuff are probably a lot higher than the data is currently reporting just because of the market. So I didn't know if there's anything else we could do besides just including in the narrative, or if HUD's working on anything to try to use more current census and ACS data.
That's a little bit outside of the scope of what I'm responsible for or working on. Because we still use like the most current census data that we get a hold of. And the analysis for impediments, that's by the time it's expiring, it can be old. Old information. James, can you chime in?
Well, like you mentioned, the the affirmative fair housing tool, that the AFFH tool that we have been using to gather and amass data for, I think, this type of analysis. I don't know that it is currently, is current, is what I should say. And that also would be something that is handled out in headquarters. So I don't have an answer for you on that. But we do still utilize that tool from time to time in reviewing products in our own activities here. So I guess if you have the most current data that you're utilizing for whatever product you're developing, that's HUD's going to look at that, and we're going to look at, if you're using something from 20 years ago, that's probably not a good idea. We understand, HUD understands that demographics change, and sometimes they change quickly. And since I think the official census data is only out every 10 years, I don't think there's an expectation that that data is going to be available to everyone, or you can do your own research. Although I think there are like periodic estimates that they do I think it's every 5 years. So that data would be available. So I don't know if I'm directly addressing your question, but I would just say for HUD's expectations, you can only work with what's available. And I couldn't answer the part about the tool that we use, because I'm not kept informed about how often that resource is updated.
And we
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, and it is like something we do take note of when things are changing, and you're reporting on changes in typically it's the annual action plan or the CAPER.
Yeah, and that's something I think to keep in mind, is that, typically, and I think probably everyone on this call is probably aware of this concept, but, back, when I was reviewing these plans, I was reviewing AIs, the analysis of impediments, which are logically supposed to flow to the consolidated plan, or CP, which logically flows to the annual plan, or the AP, which of course flowed to the CAPER. And so there should be a continual flow of your objectives. You've got the data from the AI, you bring that forth, and it ends up in the CAPER. What did you do to address your 5-year plan and your consolidated plan, and what worked, what didn't? It's basically just kind of like I think what Matt was saying earlier is you didn't have to accomplish everything necessarily, because sometimes things change. It can be demographics, it can be a host of things, but you report on your activities, what the goal was, why it wasn't met, and what the plan is for the future. And that's what the annual plans, they can address the plan for that year, and how things might have been changing or have changed that you need to change direction slightly. So I see Eric, is your hand up?
It is. I just wanted to let people know that I did put in the chat a link to my sidewalk data that was created by Root Policy Research for Commerce and IHFA as part of our most recent AI process. And so you can take a look at that. Some of it's, I think, going to be useful for folks. And when they put that together, the most recent data they had available was from 2019. So we've asked them to kind of look at data as it comes out from the 2020 census. Right now, I think the only data is available is as in experimental format, as far as I know. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But, oh, sorry about my coworker. He's barking at something. So I'm hoping that we get that refreshed, going forward this year, and that becomes more helpful for folks around the state as they're trying to put together, planning documents and CAPERs and action plans and things like that. So if you've got requests for certain kinds of data, that we can ask for in those updates, let me know. Oh, and I just want to add, sorry, we did invite, we had Elizabeth McNanny, who did the AI process for several entitlement communities, and Heidi Agler from Root Policy. We put together a presentation for Idaho's American Planning Association chapter last fall to talk about the AI process and what kind of implications it has for planners. And then I'm submitting a proposal to the Association of Cities conference this year to basically cover what's in that AI and what we found in terms of barriers and best practices that their members can follow.
Great. I don't see any other questions. If you don't mind, I was going to throw out something for the folks involved in affirmative fair housing marketing plans, since that topic came up earlier. I think there's some recent guidance that came out in 2018 that FHEO is abiding by these days. And it, from time to, I've had a number of questions about this guidance. But I just wanted to put it out there, and I'll include it in the chat here in a second for folks to have. But basically, if you get word that your AFUMP is not the plan is not ripe for review yet, so to speak, it's probably based upon this memo, and there are 3 categories in the memo that the 5 years has elapsed. This local consolidated plan has been updated, or there's some significant changes in the demographics of the housing market area. And there's a big and. The respondent or recipient has conducted an analysis which determines that population is least likely to apply. And they're not currently in that approved plan. So they're not identified. So let's just say you had a major change in your demographics, you meet the top 3, and you determine that you need to amend the plan because that one of the groups that you've identified, let's say it's a Hispanic community, has grown in your area, and they were not targeted marketing, subject to targeted marketing before, but you need to include that, then that would be something that could be right for review. So if your plan does not get reviewed, that's probably the reason why, is because it didn't meet those criteria. So I'll include that in so you can have it to look at on your own. But I thought I would throw that out there since I've had several inquiries about this updated guidance that we've received.
And is anybody in the meeting actively working on affirmative fair housing marketing plans that they would, and are there any questions about completing a affirmative fair housing marketing plan?
Yes, Sarah is offering. So if you have any questions, this is a good opportunity for someone who actually reviews the plans.
If not, we won't talk about the subject.
Yeah. And while we're waiting for questions, I can just add in when we're moving to, I wanted to touch just on a couple enforcement related things that crosses over. One of the things, because I came from the enforcement branch most recently. Before that, I was a hybrid enforcement programs staff, and so I did both of those. So One of the things I saw in enforcement, especially from, I think a disproportionate percentage of familial status cases came out of Idaho jurisdictions, and primarily with respect to occupancy cases. And so one thing that we look for in these cases is that, folks are familiar with the Keating Memorandum. It's a bit dated, but we still follow that at HUD. And so if you are not already aware, which I think that most of you will be, but if you're not already aware or very aware of the Keating Memorandum, that is something that I highly recommend for pick up and peruse over from time to time, and become familiar with that. So that is what we base our reviews on when it comes to cases. And since I've seen a disproportionate amount from out in Idaho, for example, I thought I would throw that in there. That's just something that also stuck out in my mind. Disability related issues, reasonable accommodation requests. We do have, we do get a lot of those, and I don't have numbers for you at this point. I wanted to keep this conversation a little bit more informal. But we do get, of course, that is our largest our area of enforcement activity overall, nationwide, I think even by far. But coming from Idaho jurisdictions, we also have, I think I would say, anecdotally, that we have a high percentage, a disproportionate percentage coming from out there as well, which I think is a little unusual, but it may just be a matter of education and outreach by our office, or it could be just in general that folks are not getting the information out there. And one other item that I have also noticed that we tend to do a lot more, or at least significantly more in Idaho, is design and construction issues. So if you are in the design and construction business, whether it's approving, developing, or something affiliated with those, please become familiar with the design manual, or if you're working with someone who is in that doing that process for a new construction, for example, the design manual is key. Of course, there are other safe harbors, but the design manual explains how those should be utilized. So I highly recommend also becoming familiar with the design manual with respect to design and construction issues. So those are my enforcement pointers that come up that I have seen during my tenure as an enforcement staff member. And so I thought I would throw my 2 cents out with respect to that. And of course, I can take any questions related to that as well.
I have just one quick thing, James. This is Matt again, City of Nampa. I was sort of Googling the Keating Memorandum, and I think I missed the second thing that you said that has a high occurrence in Idaho. There was the familial status, and then there was another one. The second one you said that was kind of had a high occurrence rate. Was that actually access to information? Did I understand that?
Well, the reasoning I'm not actually clear on as far as the familial status aspect, but disability related claims.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, and specifically reasonable accommodation requests, and I guess the design and construction is also disability related, although they tend to be somewhat different animals in the sense of, in one case you have a particular request regarding an issue regarding disability, and the other you have an overall design and construction issue, which precedes any specific request. So they're somewhat different animals, but they're both considered disability discrimination.
Yeah, I was just, I wanted to make sure I caught that. I want to circle up with our planning and zoning staff just to make sure that they're aware. Is that a HUD thing, the design manual?
It was, yes, it was created in conjunction with HUD and with HUD funding. But you'd be surprised. I've had cases where the architect was not familiar with the design manual. So and I think that I found that surprising, but I guess that can happen. So I'll just leave it at that.
I put up, James, in the chat. If you haven't looked at Accessibility First, which is a partnership with HUD they provide free training on accessibility under the Fair Housing Act. Super helpful. They answer questions 24/7, so you can call them and answer. They'll do technical assistance questions. They're super, super helpful. They've trained here in Idaho. We've sponsored stuff through the Fair Housing Forum. They are really, really helpful. And of course, we help statewide as well. But I think if you have technical questions, they have architects who are familiar with the Fair Housing Act on staff and have been a great collaborator. So if you haven't accessed that, we haven't had a lot in the past 2 years of design and construction cases, just because people, I think, are doing a better job. But I do think it's really helpful. I want to commend the city of Meridian, because they actually hired someone who was super helpful at making sure that new construction is being designed more accessibly. And I think we just need more of that throughout our communities, because there's not enough of that going on. And so that's been extremely helpful. And I'd say familial status, at least for us, is probably the third complaint. We do disabilities the most, but we've had an increase of race and national origin cases. So I would also make sure you're looking at that, as particularly people who are limited English proficient, and harassment cases involving race and national origin.
Yes, thank you, Zoanne. First of all, yes, Fair Housing Accessibility First. I highly recommend, if you haven't taken their trainings, they're exceptional. I've gone through their trainings at least twice, if I'm not mistaken, their whole series. So it is very good. And certainly, yes, your point is well taken. I just, in my tenure in enforcement is a little dated now. So of course things can change, but I do remember the cases of the nature that you're describing being problematic as well. Sometimes, wrapped in with other cases as well. So I appreciate that input. And we, of course, HUD certainly looks at those cases as they come in. And, we don't hesitate to take action on those when we have to. I see a hand up. Eric, is that still correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of provide an update. HUD has discontinued its contract with LCM Architects that provided the Fair Housing Accessibility First training. And that website that, a lot of us have been referring folks to over the years is no longer in, operating. So HUD's got a smattering of documents, but there's no way to download, all of the modules and the training materials that were associated with those. And there's just a few kind of haphazard links available. So we've reached out to, HUD and to LCM to find out what's going on with that. So, if you guys have any updates going forward, if you can maybe track down what the plan is going forward, that would be super helpful. I know I've been working with Dana Gover, who's a, technical support person with Northwest Disability Action Center. And she's been trying to find that to refer clients to and refer, builders and planners to. So that was a hugely helpful resource. And I know the forum members have hosted their trainings multiple times in the last 20 years. So we miss them.
Well, that's news to me, so I appreciate the intel. So, Sarah, have you heard anything about? I don't know if you had the opportunity to take those classes yet, but have you heard anything about
No,
that?
I haven't heard. This is new to me. Yeah, I haven't.
And hopefully it's not a budgetary issue. I can't really speak to that type of thing, but and hopefully it's back up before you know it.
Yeah, I don't know if Brian, have you found anything else out about that? I know we had some conversations about that in the recent past.
We've got a few more questions if there's, a few more minutes if there's other questions for any of our speakers today.
Yes, please. And by the way, I put the link in to the design manual so it can be downloaded online if anyone's interested. It's around 330 pages, so it's you can store it electronically, and I believe you can make it searchable, or it may already be searchable, so you can search by topic as well. So if there are any other questions, feel free to bring it up. Anything we haven't discussed that is on anyone's mind. I guess now would be the time while you have us here. Of course, you can always email us with questions, and we're available in that respect too. So don't feel too pressured.
Okay, well, Sarah and James, thank you so much. We really appreciate your willingness to be here today and to share with us all of these great resources and information. And I'm sure if people have other questions, they can reach out to you guys, or we can kind of connect you if needed. I know we had wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about our Fair Housing Month campaign and some social media work that some folks have been doing. I think, Christine, did you have an update you wanted to share with the group about that?
Sure, Melinda, thanks. So we put together a group of us, including the NAMPA team, Matt, Kristen, and Hannah, Carrie and Crystal and I have put together kind of an outline for how we envision this social media campaign going. So we have essentially 4 weeks outlined with 4 posts per week. And the plan is to kind of create content, including text, any hyperlinks, and a visual piece, and then provide that to the group so that they can all republish it on your own respective Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website pages. So I'm just going to pull up here on my screen a quick little PowerPoint showing the 4 weeks here. So the concept is to have a consistent campaign with consistent hashtags and something that we can reuse in the subsequent years. So the first week for topics that we came up with was basically an intro to fair housing. So we would have 4 posts here that would do an introduction and then go into defining the protected classes. And since there's 7 of those, they lend themselves nicely to 3 posts over the course of the week. And so the first one would be race, color, and national origin. then sex and familial status, and finally religion and disability. The next week that we are looking at for posts relates to tenants' rights. So this is where if the group has any feedback, we'd like 2 more topics for our week 2 posts. Right now, we just have how to file a complaint, and then we can direct folks to resources at the HUD, Fair Housing Office, and then a second post on retaliation, which is a pretty common concern amongst tenants when they're looking to file a complaint. We are hoping to have 2 more posts for this week. So if anyone on the call has any thoughts on potential topics, or you want to type it in the chat, we'd love some feedback on any other tenants' rights topics. So, any thoughts here? Well, if you think of something, I think there's one in the.
Yeah, this is Hannah. I was just going to say, when I was researching, I found a couple posts that talked about like language to look out for. And that might be helpful. It's not exactly a tenant right, but it could be helpful for tenants to look out for specific language that they could possibly get an idea about maybe what that housing provider is maybe purposefully or not purposefully doing.
Okay. And so you mean kind of like language in maybe
in
marketing
like
materials or leases?
Yeah,
or...
exactly.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, maybe something like what types of things you could file a complaint about.
Okay. Yeah, and we could probably move that after the how-to. That would lend itself nicely. All right. And I see some, Eric's posted the forum's Twitter handle, so we'll be sure to use that. And Zoe's mentioned referring folks to Idaho Legal Aid and obviously Intermountain Fair Housing Council. So we will plan to do that in our posts as we develop the content to link people to resources and be sure that all of that information is contained in this campaign as well. For week 3, we are looking at the need to know for landlords and property owners. So how does the Fair Housing Act apply to them? And then there's always that kind of, or we've frequently heard the distinction between a reasonable accommodation and a reasonable modification. So doing 2 posts to define both of those and give examples. And then how to access training and other information for landlords and property owners. And then our 4th week of the month will be common barriers and issues seen in Idaho. So actually it was good to hear that James had already mentioned some of these as things that they've seen on the enforcement side. So Fair Housing Act violations based on race, and we can also loop in national origin as that's relevant, familial status, some examples that I've heard directly relate to if there's a female head of household, so a single mother, or tenants that have children. Post 3 would be related to violations based on disability. Service animals has consistently come up in our community. So, post including some information on that. And then we'll conclude the week with information on where to access resources and helpful tips. And that's where we can link back to Intermountain Fair Housing Council and Idaho Legal Aid. So that is the general outline for the 4 weeks. If anybody has any feedback on that, we'd love to hear it. Our plan is to essentially put together these posts in a consistent manner so that everyone can have access to them ahead of start of Fair Housing Month, and then be able to post them each week and have just a statewide campaign here. This idea, I had done this before using National Preparedness Week through FEMA's program. And it just was really simple to be able to cut and paste and confirm that the information was accurate and just get it out to the community over the course of the month. So hopefully this will lend itself to being replicated in future years. Are there any questions on the campaign?
So Christine, this is Zoe from Intermountain Fair Housing Council. I was wondering if there could be maybe another, I don't know if we have time because you're only 4 weeks, but something on, I think enough times just based on our discussion today, we don't think of how people who have limited access to internet or resources, even accessibility, or lack of information on like environmental issues that may impact. We're getting a lot of all across the state on water, access to water, or shortages or pollution of water and air and dirt that's that affects people with disabilities or families with children or people of color. And some of them are intentional and some of them, are disparate impact claims. But I'm wondering if there's, maybe a week 5 or something else where you could talk about how to get involved in land use decisions or in your community. If we bring up these things, how can they come forward to talk to all of us, you all, us, HUD, about issues that people are facing that may be listed in your fair housing plans as barriers, and then ways that we as communities could address them. And what I would say, just one general barrier is, if you're limited English proficient or you have a disability, being able to participate in the process is definitely, for all of us, right? Whether they're coming for us for services, or they're coming to a community meeting, or they're coming to give feedback. If those things are barriers, they don't have access. Even in eviction court, that's an issue. But also just, when things pop up, people don't think of water as a fair housing issue or internet, but they are, right? Under Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, they are definitely, if you don't have those resources, you can't communicate, or you can't fully enjoy your housing. So I just wonder if there could be and I'm happy to help with that, or, brainstorm with everybody, but maybe that's something where, then we could have more robust involvement with all of us when we're trying to address, fair housing issues in our community, and provide solutions or ideas like access to rental assistance, or access to, the government money that there was given through the state for access to internet and things like that.
Yeah, I think we could certainly kind of adjust this last week here. And we had talked about this a little bit at the meeting, was trying to end on a high note, instead of all the things that are horrible going on in the state, maybe things people can do, proactive steps they can take. So I think we can adjust this week 4 a little bit and fill that in like either a final 2 posts or something of that nature, and point to some of those seemingly outside of the box issues that are really related to fair housing. So yeah, if you have some thoughts on that, you want to send over, or we can try to compile it into the draft posts, and run it by you. I think that'd be perfect for this last week.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I just quick example, we did this in Shoshone County. We reached out and that helped them get access to relief funds for internet and vaccinations. And people don't think of that as a fair housing issue, but in the grand scheme of things, it is, because there's a large number of people who are disabled in that community, a large indigenous population, and families with children. So I just throw that out there because I think it is really good for people to hear about resources and how fair housing impacts them, so they can make a change in their community and work with their governments and private transactors to get things done, right? So I do think it's a great idea to share solutions and resources.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And we can circulate this PowerPoint outline to everyone. And so if you have any other feedback you want to provide, obviously we want to try to get these together before the start of the Fair Housing Month, and we'll start creating content and designing the posts so that they look consistent and have graphics with them. So if you have any thoughts, if you can get those over to us sooner than later, we'll try to incorporate that into the social media campaign. And I believe the plan is to run this by everyone, the final version before it's available to post. So you'll be able to see it, I think at our March, at least a next to final draft at our next meeting. And hopefully we'll get this all ready for everyone, so.
One piece I wanted to add is that the group is basically getting all of the information together so that we can create the content by next week. So like Christine said, we do need that pretty timely so that we can be finished with the information that we're collecting by next week. So if you can get it to us like this week, that would be ideal.
Thanks, Crystal. More concisely manage the expectations than I was rambling on. So yeah, any thoughts are welcome and appreciated, and hopefully we'll have a good product for you all. So I'll incorporate those thoughts from today and get it to our working group, and we'll just go from there. So I'll put my my email in the chat so folks can have that, and I can get the PowerPoint emailed out to everyone as well.
Great. Thank you all for your work on that. It's looking wonderful. That will definitely be a great resource for everybody to make consistent sharing easier. Okay, are there any other final thoughts or anything that anyone wanted to share with the rest of the group before we wrap up for today?
I think are you going to move on to like future months trainings? I don't want to step on the agenda item if it's coming right away.
We can do a quick overview of next month. Sorry, I don't want to tell everybody the wrong date. Let me look at this really quick. Okay, next month on the 22nd, I think that should say the 16th. The 16th of March is our next Fair Housing Forum. And we will be joined next time for a talk from, I'm sorry, I don't have this right up here. 1 second to find it. Okay, sorry. Next month, Sarah Van Cleve will be joining us. She's the executive director of the Housing Alliance and Community Partnerships, which is based in Pocatello. And she'll be sharing some of her work and some things that she has seen there. So it'll be wonderful to have her with us. And then after that, we'll be sharing kind of future months topics. Was there more you wanted to share, Matt? Go ahead.
Well, I think we are going to be trying to find a representative for June. But we were trying to identify from that list of suggested future meeting topics, and we have a housing provider we work with from time to time that I would be interested in discussing some things around. I think one of the suggestions was trainings for attainable housing, landlord training, things of that nature, and I think they might be agreeable to touch on some of those type of topics. I just didn't want to move down that path if we had different ideas about the next 2 months trainings. I just didn't want to wait till the end of March to give them a topic for June, I guess is my. So if no one has any objections to having a local housing provider maybe talk on some of those two issues, I'll go ahead and see if I can line it up for June.
Sounds great to me. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I agree.
That works for me, Matt.
This is Eric. So I listened back to the discussion from January. I was out of town when that one happened. So I spent some time listening and watching that one. And I noticed there were some questions about, like, oh, if only we had a website where we could share information about fair housing in Idaho. And so I just want to make it clear that we have one. So I don't know if folks on this call have visited fairhousingforum.org, but if you guys want, I can do a quick screen share and just show people what's on there and how to navigate, get information. Is that something folks would be interested in?
I would, Eric, and also you might mention that our meeting, the recordings are on YouTube, right?
Well, I'm linking to all the recordings from this page. I'll show you where that is so you can take a look at it.
That'd be great. Thanks, Eric.
Okay.
There's also, folks have been sharing things in the chat. So
yeah,
if you haven't checked out the chat, please make sure you look there quickly. I know Amara was posting some resources that they have around fair housing marketing that might also help with the social media campaign too. So lots of good stuff happening there. Just
okay, and it
want to
looks
make sure
like
people notice.
there we go. For some reason, okay, my screen was frozen for a second. Okay, can you guys see that screen?
Yes.
Okay, so basically there's just a disclaimer, waiver of liability here. We ask new users to check that. It just says, we are not the boss of anybody and you're responsible for your own actions. We're not giving you legal advice, and you release everyone from everything forever if you use this website, something like that. And then kind of how to navigate, how to use the translation feature. We've got the Google Translate button here. You can switch this, into Spanish if you want. We've got that message in English and Spanish there. How to file a fair housing complaint, that links to Intermountain and other options directly to HUD as well. And then here's the page that I put together on our Fair Housing Forum monthly meetings. So just a really brief introduction to that, and then you can continue and expand that. And it has the dates of each meeting, what we talked about, and links to video or any recordings of that discussion. This is the one from last month on segregated by design. And then this is today's discussion. So I'm just putting together, information that was shared today with links to some of the issues like, Keating Memo and Fair Housing Act Design Manual, stuff like that. So that's on there. If you want to kind of search by topic, there's a list of topics along the side here on the right side. And so you can click into resources and links. This page just includes lots of different resources under different headings. So again, you can browse that. We've got a whole page on limited English proficiency, and some of the basics on that needs to be updated. I'm talking to Gary Haynes about helping with that. And then you can just search on any term you want in the search field and find any articles that relate to that. So we can search for bus bench, for instance, and find the historic information about campaigns where we had bus advertisements and things like that. You can search for radio spot, and you should see, basically that goes back to this original campaign in the Treasure Valley, and then links to the 30-second fair housing PSA radio spot. There's information on the TV spot for statewide consumption, and then you can download the posters from there. So you got a lot of different options. There is a glossary and definitions section. So, and that is always, we're always ready to update that as needed. So if you see stuff that needs to be changed or updated, give me a holler and I'll make sure and get that updated. And so that's basically it. It goes back to, I think, pretty sure 2007-ish, 2008 maybe. So there's a lot of information on there that kind of traces what we've been working on with the Fair Housing Forum over time.
Eric, Nicole is also asking how she can get added to the mailing list.
Send us an email and we'll add you, or post your email in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Eric. Appreciate that overview. Was there anything else anyone wanted to bring up or questions? Okay, I'm gonna take that silence as a no. If you think of anything, please feel free to shoot an email to any of us, and we will make sure that that gets either added to the next agenda for the meeting or answered in the meantime if we can. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks, Sarah and James.
Yes, thank you. It was fun participating in today's conversation.
Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate your knowledge.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.